hello to everyone who's watching. My name is Tokala Tatum. I am the director and creator of Torn Apart, and I wanted to do something special for the Torn Apart 1 year anniversary. And so I wanted to sit down with my composer and have a chat about the beautiful score that we were blessed to have in the movie. And so here's David. I'll let him introduce himself. Just give yourself an introduction, where you come from, and just your musical background, how you came to be where you are now.
Thanks, Tokala. Yeah, as Tokala mentioned, my name is David, and I am a composer of sorts. I love music. I love doing film music in any way that I can find myself into a project. And I mean, that's not to say I'll take any old rubbish. I like picking my projects very carefully, but I've always wanted to do film music. Um, ever since I was 9, I've always wanted to do film music. When I first heard music for any of the James Bond films that came out in the 90s, but with music by David Arnold, or his score for Stargate or Independence Day, I've always wanted to do film music. So it's been a dream come true. But I've always been into music in one way or another. You know, I've always been into ska and reggae. I play trombone. I've played that since I was like 9 years old. So it's been a lifelong passion of music, and now I'm just finally starting to be able to live my dream, and just dive headlong into whatever kind of music that I feel is right, for whatever story it is that you, sir, come up with.
that's a that's one of the most unique things that I always notice about you, is how you said your background comes from like a reggae style music, and that's just so interesting. Can you give me some more background information on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I had a great uncle who played saxophone back in the 60s and 70s, and he was with like a number of big bands and jazz bands, and did some like session recordings on, you know, a lot of different he did some session recordings on some soundtracks, but also just session work for a lot of different bands, a lot of American bands, a lot of English bands, some of those including ska and reggae. So I heard him, on records, all over the place. My dad idolized him. So, I was brought up hearing all this different music in different genres. And then just, randomly at school, it was like, do you want to sign up to do brass or play an instrument or whatever? So I thought, oh yeah, I'd like to play saxophone. The music teacher took one look at me and said, you ain't got the mouth to play saxophone. How about a brass instrument? I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll play trumpet then. But no, your mouth's too big. Your gob is too big for a trumpet. You need to play something more like a tuba or a trombone. So I took up trombone because I didn't want to play tuba. Who bloody well would? So I took up trombone and was never really interested in playing any of the things that were assigned to me to play. I used to try and sneak out, because playing a musical instrument at school automatically signs you up to play for the school band, and I hated the idea of that. So I'd sneak out of school and just would put on records back home and learn to play by playing along to those. So I just got into ska and reggae and punk, which are still pretty heavy in the English music scene now. So, found myself into a band, just wandered in to get a part-time job at a store one day, and the assistant manager there said, oh, do you play any musical instruments? Yeah, I play trombone. Oh, would you come and join our band? So I did, and I joined a ska band
Wow.
in Luton, England, called Semi Skinned, because half the guys had no hair and were skinheads and bald. So I then went around, first the local area, and then a little bit, I mean, it was a local band, but a little bit wider area in England, just touring with this band, playing gigs in murky ska punk two-tone clubs and pubs around London.
Wow.
Great time. and that was my like first sort of musical experience, I guess. And then I just brought that same sort of sentiment over here. I'm just going to do it down and dirty and live the dream that I've always wanted to do of doing some film music.
That's crazy. That's
featuring as much trombone as I can fit in, because obviously that's really important. When you think film score, you think trombone.
That's such a crazy story. I feel like we could do a whole freaking talk just on your background about all that reggae stuff. It's so crazy.
I mean, I could waffle on, but I mean that's the gist of it.
But going to the next question I had, I think it's a pretty interesting story about how me and you met, and I just want to hear you explain it about how our collaboration happened and how we kind of met. Go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned I wanted to do film composition, and so I was thinking, well, how the bloody hell do I do that? I have no connections. I have no formal education in music, so I've got no qualifications. I can't go to a management firm for composers and go, yeah, here's my resume of environmental science education. Find me a movie to score. Well, how do I do this? So at first, I just reached out to a couple of different channels on YouTube and just tried to, send them some music. And then I had the bright idea of, well, there's all these movies getting made through Kickstarter. Why don't I have a look at some of those? I stumbled across Tokala Tatum's Torn Apart in the thriller section. And I read the campaign, and I've even though I haven't been, I'm not a professional composer, I don't have a big body of work, I still would say I'm extremely picky about the people that I even bother to contact. And the campaign was one that I had to contact you because I knew straight away that this was going to be something different. This was going to be something interesting. This was going to be something that would really be inspiring. Not just in the fact that it's an important story and it talks about, marginalized communities and real life struggles that are going on, but also, I mean, a revenge thriller is always good. And it just struck me that you knew what you were doing. This wasn't a low budget film that was just being thrown together. This was someone who had a deep passion for the story that they were going to tell. And I knew that, this was one that if I get involved in, it's going to be really great. And I knew I wanted to do that, so I contacted you through the details that I was able to scrounge up on the Kickstarter. Got chatting, I put together a demo and sent you that demo. I mean, like I said, the campaign was inspiring, so it took me no time at all to throw together a demo. So by the time we were chatting, I was like, this is what I'd like to do. This is what I hear when I read your campaign.
Wow, that is awesome. The crazy thing is, from my side, even when I was thinking conceptually about the movie, music just never crossed my mind because it was something that I just didn't have the resources to create. Like, I mean, I remember when we first met, you told me that you watched my first film, Invisible, and I was literally just pulling royalty-free music off of YouTube and just throwing it in there. And so having something like this is something that, I mean, it always crossed my mind, but me and you meeting just sparked such a large passion in me. Now I just have such a love for music and film and how it fits into my stories. And also the crazy thing about it is we could have possibly never met, because I remember you messaged me on Facebook, but you messaged me on like my business profile kind of, and those messages just get flooded into something that doesn't notify me, and I just randomly scrolled through it one day and came across your message, and I could have just never seen the message to this day. So it's pretty cool. The people I've met in film, especially with you, it feels like it was meant to happen. Like we were meant to meet each other. It really feels like that at times. So,
or you could argue 3/4 of it is luck. or you could argue that three quarters was fate. I don't know.
Yep. Depends on which side you're on. That's true. That's true. But now going into now we know a little background about you and how me and you met. What I'm really curious about is, and I can't picture it, is just your creative process in general, and also with this story specifically, because you just mentioned that you had musical ideas coming to you even while just reading the Kickstarter campaign, and I didn't even know that. So I'm just kind of curious on how you would describe your creative process when it comes to film music specifically.
Yeah, I mean, once I'm into the composing, there is definitely a process that I go through.
Mhm.
But I mean, when we're talking about just the initial idea, I knew reading the campaign, I knew almost immediately the sound I wanted to give it,
Mm.
and the sound that in my arrogant head this film had to have.
Mhm. Mhm.
It needed to be a modern, or at least my take on a spaghetti western, using
Mm.
largely synths. It's just an idea that sort of popped into my head more than anything else. An idea that I couldn't contain
Mhm.
almost. Because I started doing that demo with just I read the campaign once. I didn't really even return to read it multiple times.
Mhm.
I just sort of walked away. I sent you that message, and then I walked away and went downstairs into my studio and just started playing around. And at first, nothing really happened. It was just I down a few chords, and I had
Mhm.
ideas in my head, of Ennio Morricone and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and A Fistful of Dollars.
Mhm.
Those sorts of scores that lots of us, anyone who's seen any of those movies has heard, and
Mhm.
they're considered iconic. So I just
Mhm.
had that swimming around in my brain for a couple of days when all of a sudden I just had an idea, and I went over to the piano and started playing, and Leo's theme just popped out onto
Wow.
the keys.
That is
And
awesome.
that was it. After
Mhm.
that, it was just once I started getting, the script, I
Mhm.
started doing a few sort of just idea concepts
Mhm.
for several of the key scenes. It takes reading the script to get a good grasp of at least your main characters, or determining whether the idea of what I'd heard is actually right.
Mm.
And turns out it was. Thank Christ,
Yeah.
otherwise there would have been a whole panicked, desperate search for something new. But um, yeah, it worked,
Oh.
and I started to construct these little demo tracks for you for
Mm.
Jolene's abduction and the rest stop fight. This based on what I'd seen on the page.
Mhm.
So these aren't anything that's timed. And
Mhm.
then it just takes getting the footage, finding it, and really, I like to take the audio of the
Mhm.
scene and put it into my software, and then I'll just compose to the audio. I won't bother with the visuals. I'll watch the visuals many times over, but then I'll really just compose to the
Ah.
audio.
What the hell does the boss expect us to do at the rest area? Assuming the gunfight did happen. I don't feel comfortable cleaning up dead bodies in a public area like that. What the hell does the boss expect us to do at the rest area? Assuming the gunfight did happen. I don't feel comfortable cleaning up dead bodies in a public area like that.
And I feel like that gives added weight to the dialogue,
Mhm.
added weight to any of the sound effects. Like, you can really hear it when you're not seeing it, and that helps me compose
Wow.
to it. I mean, I know what the visuals are, but that way I know I'm not blotting out any dialogue, getting over enthusiastic with the music at the wrong time.
Mhm.
And if you're just concentrating on what people are saying, you're concentrating most on what their emotions are in that moment. It just produces something, for me, that works better with the emotions on screen.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's something I never knew, and that actually went into my next question perfectly. I was really curious about the growth of the sound, going from now knowing the campaign, just the Kickstarter campaign, to then the script, and then the footage, and then knowing that you take away the footage and now you're just hearing the sound. I guess a follow-up question I would have is with Torn Apart specifically, were there any moments or any parts of the story where you did maybe have to adjust a little bit, or maybe in a certain sequence? Were there any moments like that, or did it all kind of come out organically and naturally?
Probably the trickiest scene I had to compose was actually the very first scene with Luna.
I've got a piece to the belt.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Simply because there wasn't the way I'd envisioned the theme developing for her, that the scene didn't allow for that. Like there was no sort of room for the progression that I'd thought, and what the music that I'd written was just too positive.
Interesting.
I had to strip that away, and they were in immediate danger. And the instruments that I really wanted to feature for her, just it's too much. It's too much for the scene. It really needs to be stripped back. I mean, that is one actually that I look back on now and think, well, if I was doing it today, I would do it even different, more differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the piece of music that I'm least satisfied with in the whole score.
Wow.
Which just feels strange, really. It's the opening scene. Like the whole rest of the story is yet to come, and I'm stumped on scene one. How does that bode for making the rest of the music for the entire rest of the film? Well, if you can't sort the first scene, what the bloody hell am I going to do now?
Wow, that's really interesting. That's actually something that I'm surprised that you were affected by Luna the same way, because even just from audience members who've watched the movie, they always point out Luna is kind of like this. I don't know, she's a very special character in the story. She's almost has like a heavy weight to her all the time, from the beginning to the end. And so that's pretty cool how it's also in the music as well. That's something I never knew. Wow, that's pretty crazy. I guess I guess going there, because we will get to talking about the theme specifically, so we'll definitely talk more about that now that I'm interested. But
yeah, you could have done me a favor with her, mate. You could have made her smile at least once, or at least.
Oh man, but now going into a little deeper into the score. And with the script, it's obviously has heavy themes of Native American culture and stuff like that, and I'm just curious on how you went about incorporating Native sounds, especially with the song that we were provided with by Black Lodge, which is a Native American drumming group from the Yakima tribe. I think they're the only Native American drumming group that won a Grammy, which is a really cool fact. But they provided that song for us. But even before that, how did you go about kind of keeping a native sound and theme conscious in the score, even if you might have had no background of native culture at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly, a traditional American, am I? I mean, I'm living here now, but it's hard to hide my English heritage. So, for me to come over and be like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing with this, be just absurd. But I mean, I knew that it would be a failure of the music if it just went a traditional Western action thriller route and didn't focus heavily. Because the whole point of the story is that it's focused on the Yakima tribe, so it needs to have Yakima music. Now, if you look at any like MIDI package, you're not going to get, oh, here's a bunch of Yakima instruments. Like they don't exist. So I knew I had to pull it from somewhere. So I did get as much sort of Native American drum sounds as I could. But the real gift was that song from Black Lodge. That was obviously a privilege for them to just let us use it, let me dismantle it and take it apart for samples that I then used throughout the score. But that really gave the music legitimacy, because I'm actually using stuff that now sounds like the drums would, rather than approximation. And I mean, you've got a recording of live instruments. You can't beat recording of live instruments, particularly if you're doing some kind of percussion. Just everything is so much more rich and vibrant, and using the vocal samples that I used as well throughout the score, it really gives it a unique sound.
Yeah, it does.
And well, it speaks to the characters as well, particularly as Leo's going on his journey. Like, I use it very sparingly in the beginning, but once he goes into full on, I've got to destroy these people mode. And once he says "Hoka hey," everything just is blasted into the score.
I got the key!
That is pretty cool. I think before moving on, I want to ask a follow-up question, because I know the native sound and theme really fits with Leo's character a lot. But were there any parts where you tried to fit it with Jolene as well, even though Jolene goes on a completely different journey?
Yeah, Jolene goes on a completely different journey, but I mean, the main theme, I always felt it was Leo and Jolene's theme.
Yeah.
It's just the expression of that theme is different when I'm dealing with the two characters. Jolene has her moment to rise up and fight, and she gets so the theme gets the exact same treatment for her as it does for Leo.
You see what happens, you fucking bitch? Fuck you!
But then at the end of the story, it diverges, and there's much more relief for her, but also this conflict of trauma. hope it's felt in the music.
It
for that.
definitely is. Yeah. It's one thing I noticed, and I thought it was a really cool way to do it. Is that the main theme that you created was always Leo and Jolene's theme. They're both going on different paths, but I think that's a really cool way you said it about how it's just felt differently, or just the different paths. That's really cool. Wow. I guess stepping away from talking about the native sound a little bit more and going into the action thriller that you mentioned. This film a lot of the time feels like a thriller, throughout its story and the way it was captured. For example, like when Jolene goes missing, and the rest area is kind of just left empty, and there's no real answer until after the fact. That's a very a thriller-esque way to capture that moment.
The hell?
Jolene.
The hell is she at?
So how did you go about fitting the score to have that feeling? For example, the track "Screams in the Distance," which is when Leo's looking for Jolene. How did you go about fitting that into the story?
Well, that's interesting, because that's one of the ones that I did as a demo just off the script. I kind of imagined. I mean, that's that main guitar riff, the acoustic guitar riff, that makes up most of that piece, was done just off the script. Because we also chatted when we were, looking at the script, and so you told me, what you were thinking for that scene as well. And it kind of just, along with the theme, that was another one that I was doing something completely unrelated and wasn't even thinking about the score. I think I was doing some work, for my day job, and then just thought, oh, I've got to stop everything, and just ran off into my studio and just played this idea. And that just became the entire basis of that scene. And it was only solidified when I actually saw the footage as well. I mean, I added those electronic drones over the top, as the camera spins around Leo, and he gets more and you get that more. You can see his desperation, and you can see his complete disorientation of what is going on.
Jolene. Wow.
So the footage definitely informed it, but it really came about just having that scene in my head from reading the script, and it just triggered an idea randomly one day that just worked beautifully.
Yeah, it really did. That's I remember that, and that actually answers my follow-up question, because I was curious if that was present in the early stage, which it was. It was present in the script even before you saw footage, which is really cool. But I remember bits and pieces having that conversation with you about what I thought for that sort of thriller feeling, and the reason I remember it so vividly is because now it's such a large part of like hearing the music that you've created for that track "Screams in the Distance" has really helped me find my own sound in film, because I remember explaining it to you. I really wanted something that felt like it was kind of brewing, like it was kind of rumbling from under the ground, and it was going to burst up at any moment. And "Screams in the Distance" did that perfectly. It's still like probably one of my favorite tracks throughout the whole score, and it's something that even going into other projects, we worked on a short film now together, and kind of a second feature, but and that's always been prevalent. I just really like that feeling of something's brewing under the surface, and "Screams in the Distance" did that very well.
That sense of dread.
Yeah, sense of dread. I love it. I love that feeling. But going on the other hand, the story also amplifies the stakes and incorporates some classic high intense action set pieces with rest area gunfight. It's the final showdown. The Savage, where Leo comes to the rest area and executes one.
I got the key!
Going on the other hand of the thriller side and maybe more the action side, how did you go about fitting the score for that?
Well, I mean, I've been listening to film music for a long time, and some of my favorite composers. I mean, I already mentioned David Arnold, but Jerry Goldsmith, John Carpenter, Ennio Morricone, James Horner, some composers that people won't have heard of because they'll have been scored a lot of Italian horror movies and Italian-made westerns. People like Claudio Simonetti, Goblin, and another bloke who I'm now handily forgetting his name, but did a film called Absurd, which is another slasher film, but the music is very, very driven. It's not like horror scores that you get out of Hollywood. It's obviously from the 70s and 80s, so it's synth heavy, but it's extremely propulsive. And so I knew that a mishmash of that was something that I really wanted to create. That's the sound that I, hear, and that's the sound that I knew I wanted to put on the screen for those. Whilst continuing, with this spaghetti western synth sound that features Black Lodge heavily, so it's driven by those drums. So I always needed it to be just marching forward, and then just lay a synth over the top of it and make it as loud and as bombastic as I could. Although I didn't want it to be, I knew I didn't want to have any synth strings in it, although I did cheat a bit and put in some synth strings, but only for one specific moment.
Drop. Come on. What's your boyfriend's name?
Which is actually a homage to Basil Polidoris's score for The Hunt for the Red October. Which is a submarine movie. I don't know why I felt like that had to go in the showdown, but I wanted to put it there. And I just knew it had to pound you into submission.
Wow. Yeah. The one thing I always get from feedback from an audience is as soon as that first rest area gunfight hits off, when the first action that anyone sees in the entire movie, the one thing they always mention is that the music just completely took over them, and they're like, man, they immediately just felt just immersed because of that track, which is I think it's called The Savage. Called The Savage. That track did a lot for a lot of people to fully bring them in, because that was kind of the point of that moment. It's supposed to be where Leo he's kind of went a little too far. That's why he throws up when he noticed what he just did. And I think that your track that you made solidified that moment for the audience too, where they're like, well, we're kind of this is the way it's going. It's going this way, not the other way. going back into it, I wanted to get a little more detailed and talk about character themes. And we already kind of touched upon Leo and Jolene's theme, and so, but I do want to follow up on Luna's theme and just ask you, since you had such a hard time with that theme, how did you go about growing that theme over the course of the film after starting it up on the opening scene?
Well, the whole idea of her theme was that it had to have a melody. But that melody shouldn't really change in terms of I'm not going to mess around with the key, but have to make it sound just more and more broken as it goes along, more and more hopeless, and well, to reflect her journey, I guess, her journey towards nothing.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, that's the Lena's theme is something I was always curious about, especially when it comes to the showdown track, because when that moment happens, it's all bombastic and Leo and the boss are facing off. Then it cuts to Luna and it immediately takes a dive, and that always gets me every single time I watch the film. And yeah, we'll get to that, down to the showdown track in a little bit. But going off of Luna's theme, I think that's really interesting how Luna's theme sounds so vastly different from almost anything in the entire score. It sounds so unique compared to everything else. That's a pretty cool part. But going into this is one I really want to ask you is about the boss's theme. Because the boss has such an awesome theme, and a lot of people always mention his sound as well, especially when Jolene first gets delivered to the boss and that guitar hits of that moment. But just asking you the same question: how do you establish that theme in the beginning and then grow it over the course of the film?
Yeah, so I mean, Leo and Jolene's theme, just a moment of getting an idea randomly. Same thing really for Luna's. I mean, it was more just, I need to come up with a theme, and I'm just playing around. I was just jamming, and that came out. The boss's theme, I didn't have anything until I saw, even reading the script, I had nothing for the boss. I knew I needed something, but I didn't have anything. And then I got scene 18.
No. We need to think about this. Seems way too hot right now to be transporting this much cargo. We got time before anyone sees what the hell went down.
Boss, that rest area is gonna have cops breathing down our necks.
I know.
And I watched it, and that's when it then fell into place. As soon as I watched it, and I saw his performance and just the way that he was playing it, that's when I knew it's got to be low key, but it's also got to be kind of jazzy. Like this is a guy who considers himself. I mean, he abducts women, but he considers himself a bit of a ladies' man. So okay, well this nonce needs to have a theme that is threatening, but also a bit of a snazzy vibe about him. He's got his delusions about how smooth he is. So let's give him something that's a bit smooth. So I knew it had to be. I needed to bring out the jazz keyboard, and I needed to put in some jazz chords. There's a lot of jazz chords in that, where I'm just going from switching keys mid-phrase to just go through this thing and give him a little bit of personality in that music.
Mhm.
He's
Wow.
he's the one who's always got a big grin on his face through everyone else is having a terrible time. He's having a really good time until it all goes tits up at the end. But before that, he's having a smashing old time out there.
Mhm.
So why not? He's having a bit of fun, that lads. So give him a
Wow.
bit of a jazzy theme.
Oh, yeah, that's something that I'm really glad that you picked up on. But it did take you until watching the footage. But something that I think before I even presented the script to you, when I was writing Torn Apart by myself at first, before you were in the picture, the one thing that I didn't like about the boss is he was very one-dimensional. He was just like, I'm a bad guy, I do bad things, and this is what I do. And so when I was writing the character, I kind of changed it to where he's he's trying to lean into the girls a little bit and bring them close with how soft and suave he is, and the cigarette in his mouth, and I think working with Anthony Love, who just did such an awesome job playing the boss, just solidified that, and it was so perfect, came together so well.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and he really brought it to life. I mean, that was a whole aspect to him that, I mean, it was there on the page in the words, but you can't read those words and infer the performance that he gets.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what I really needed to bring that through, and I just made the theme get more and more pissed off as the movie goes along, as his grand plans just come crumbling down. He doesn't get desperate. He just gets really knocked off about this guy coming in and just cocking the whole thing up for him.
Yeah, very true. Very true. But yeah, it's a real awesome story. That's something. And for people who don't know, I'll throw the scene into this conversation. But scene 18 is when the boss kills Vincent, when Vincent comes back, and he's super freaked out about everything that happened, and the boss just shoots him cold and goes to finish his cigarette. So that's the scene we're talking about.
Yeah, that henchman has my favorite reaction in the whole movie. And he comes in and just says, "Yeah, that's what you get to a dead body on the floor."
If you see that boyfriend, kill him.
Hey, what the fuck was that?
Jesus
Shit!
Christ!
Damn, that's what you get, punk.
Yeah.
Flexing whilst he does it. Who are you flexing at? The guy's dead.
Filming that scene and just filming with that henchman, Ren is his name, but in real life his name's Mick. Just filming with him was so awesome. There's so many lines that he brought to life and just added his own flavor. Like that line that's your favorite, that wasn't even in the script. He just said it on the fly. Just moments like that, just so perfect.
Yeah, that was magic. That cracks me up every time.
But we were just talking about the boss's theme and about how it gets more angry and more aggressive towards the end of it. That goes into the final showdown, which is one of my favorite parts, and with the music as well. I think the first thing that I want to ask you is the showdown track is 12 minutes and 50 seconds long, pretty much 13 minutes, which is pretty insane to me. And I guess the question I have for you is, like, after watching footage, and I mean, you might have already known before seeing footage that it was going to be a long moment, but is that something that's like kind of intimidating for you, where you're like, I need to create a cohesive track for 13 minutes long?
I mean, obviously, it's daunting when you know, okay, I've got to produce, a track that goes through multiple, not scene changes, but mood changes.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different little set pieces within that.
Yeah.
But that was another one where I read it and I already kind of knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I'd already picked out that bit to throw in the synth strings, and an 80s drum machine. I knew I had to have that in there for that moment.
Drop it. Come on.
And the only bit that I didn't have a plan for going into it was when that henchman gets dragged off by the skinwalker.
What is it? Barking Slender Man?
It's the only bit I didn't really know what I was going to do for that little patch of it. So for the longest time, I had the whole track, but not that 20-second section. I just had to figure out what was I going to do there. So I need to switch into a horror mode, and I don't know. It's not like that's intensely difficult to write horror music, but when you're in the flow of doing something action, you've got to go, wait, stop. I can't do what I've been doing for the rest of it here. This needs to be something else. And I guess like the break to go from the boss and Leo are fighting into Luna's falling apart. I had the theme for Luna and I knew, kind of what I was going to do, but that was something that I just had to play and just see what came out and figure that part out for itself. But, final fight, I knew exactly what I wanted. It helps again that Black Lodge very kindly let us use their music, because it was a no-brainer. Leo and Jolene's theme, because they're both fighting the boss, and the drums and vocal samples from Black Lodge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Leo has finally gone full-on warrior.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I guess a follow-up question I have to that is, since you went into it already knowing what you kind of wanted to do with the sound, when you get the footage and I'm kind of sending you rough cuts that are just quiet and empty, what kind of process do you go through to then say, okay, I have this sound, how do I adapt it into this footage that I have? Because especially with the showdown, like you mentioned, there are moments that completely switch to something else, and there's pauses, like it's very crafted and cohesive. How do you go with that initial sound in your head to then adapt it to that actual footage?
For me, it's just a case of playing it. I've watched the scene so many times, and now I've got the audio into my software, and I just keep playing it over and over again. And ideas just come out.
Wow.
And I'm able to then just, Torn Apart, a lot of the music came out really easily. I really didn't have to put much thought into it. I just played, and that's
awesome.
That's the end result. I was daunted going into that, because I was like, okay, well, this is the end. I've done a whole bunch of music already, but now this is the big final scene. So the music's got to be good. I can't drop the ball now. But also, it's like, well, you want to release this thing, and we're getting pretty bloody close to that. I've got to really pick up the pace on this. But fortunately, again, the idea of just driving everything with the percussion, once I've got the percussion down, it's very easy to write the rest. The rest just sort of came out.
Yeah. I
knew where I wanted the themes to really smack you in the face, and when I'd played those themes dozens of times, or hundreds of times by that point. If you count like all the jams just to get the theme together, well, it just comes out by that point. Okay, I know that Leo and the boss are fighting, and I'm not going to bother. I didn't want to write music that like made a sting on every point of the fight. I just wanted the theme to play over the entirety of the fight. Makes it much more easy, but it's also just an expression of this is the end of Leo's journey. This is where it's brought him. We don't need to hear anything too complicated. Just no. It's more like an approach to writing. I have no experience of writing music for theatre, but you're writing music for theatre. You're not going to sync the music up with every action. You're just writing a mood piece that goes over the background of it that fits.
Yeah.
I see what Trish had to say.
Mhm. Absolutely, I agree, and that's something with me that I kind of struggled with and bounced with since I am the one that also edited the entire movie. So David would send me these tracks, and as soon as he sent me a demo, it didn't matter what time of the day it was or what time of the night it was. I would immediately come to my computer, download it, and immediately throw it into my editing software just to play it out, just so I could sleep on it, thinking over how I'm gonna fit it. And the final showdown is definitely something. When I got that track, I think for me it definitely took the most work because, like David said, you created that mood piece, and there were some moments with me where I was kind of struggling of if it fit with the moment or if it did it. And obviously the showdown track fits with pretty much the entire thing, but I think the one thing that I did switch out was that dream sequence, because if you listen to the actual showdown track on Spotify, which you should listen to, if you look up Torn Apart Original Motion Picture Soundtrack, it'll pop up. You should definitely give it a listen. But the showdown track is vastly different, or not vastly different, but that dream sequence is completely switched out. And that's something that I was just playing around with, because from my perspective, I didn't know if I wanted that dream scene to be in there at all, but it did need a moment of just hold that tension. Jolene's asleep, you don't know if she's gonna wake up, and then you just needed to hold the audience in the air before you drop them, and that dream scene just worked. I guess the question I have for you is what was your take and what was your idea going into that dream scene specifically, and what you created for it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you use some of the music from the end credits.
Yeah, that's what
together.
it was.
So that actually has my brother playing acoustic guitar on that. So it has a really nice acoustic guitar. I mean, it sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
I went down. I made it much more subdued, particularly when you go straight in, first into the dream sequence. The music I made was much more subdued, and then rather than focusing on that sort of hold of suspense, I really just sort of put it into how Jolene's feeling in that moment. So it's a more contemplative bit of music, which really does break up the flow. Of you've got this intense action and it cuts to that, and then cuts back into the action again. And I mean, as a composer, you'll get that. You'll get those moments where we're not quite in sync with each other. But I just have to hope that I've done something like I did that you like, that you can just put in there, and then the rest of the thing works. I mean, if I didn't have that piece already, you would have just talked it out and changed the overall one. But that does give you, there's that interesting little bit now when you watch the movie, you'll see that the music's not quite the same as it is on the album.
Definitely. Yeah. That's something that did work very well, because David created so much sound. The end credits track is like almost 8 minutes long, and there's so many different pieces in there that for me, when I was creating movie trailers or just editing the scenes in the movie, I could just listen to any there and see if there's something I like that I could throw in, and I think that's what works so well. And I think going past the showdown, going to that ending score, how we ended off the movie, which is what I love. One part that I really love a lot, that I think people will be surprised by, is when Leo and Jolene get to the rest area and the cops are there and tell them to put their hands up, and it's just that rumbling sound that kind of just sits and the screen goes black, and then it goes to Jolene driving.
See, I don't know about radio anymore, but podcasts are the way to go.
Absolutely, that's why we do it.
And that's exactly why we do it, because I think we can get the real news out there, especially if you're going to...
I guess I just want to ask you, which you probably don't have an answer for, but how do you kind of find these melodies of knowing, just creating that sound? I'm just so curious because I can't picture of how you just create that sound of something that just sits and just flows with the scene so well.
I mean, these are good questions that I can't really give you a solid answer, mate. Yeah, like I said, I mean, all of that was it's just being confident with the theme and then just playing. You know, I've got the audio and I've watched the footage and I know how she's feeling from that. And then just playing the theme with that feeling. If that makes any sense. You know, so it really is like a dismantling of the theme at that point. I'm mixing, you know, I knew watching it, I'm going to be mixing, I'm going to be changing the key as I go, and I'm going to be mixing, you know, major sounds with minor sounds, happy with sad. And that's going to conflict with the melody. Parts of the melody are going to fit with those chords and parts of it are not. They're not going to be discordant and, you know, painful to listen to, but there's going to be emotional tension within it. And then when you're not playing the whole theme, you know, if your ear becomes accustomed to a theme or a tune, you know, like with any good pop song, you know, if it's got a hook, you instantly recognize if they don't play it the same way, or, you know, if it's not finished, not resolved, like your brain instantly picks up on that. And that's either going to be a moment of excitement or some kind of change of emotion within the song. And that's what I wanted to do for Jolene, because at the end of the day, she's escaped and she's definitely happy about that. But I mean, her final line to Leo, she's not in a good place.
Yeah.
She's not in a trusting mood anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even of him. So, yeah, that's what the music needed to portray. And it just, if I'm trying to do anything really emotive, it's like when I'm playing trombone, I can't really overthink it. I've just got to play it. That's when all the best sort of musical moments I have when I'm like jamming. Is if I overthink it, it's not going to have that same emotion in it as if I just go play it.
Wow, yeah, that is really cool. That's really cool. That's a part in the script or a part in the film that I love so much, just because the music it really just embodies Jolene in that moment. At that point, the story shifts from Leo to completely being about Jolene, and the sound really helps that. I guess going into that, because that track and that final line that Jolene ends off with leads into the end credits. And I guess the one thing I want to ask you is, because the end credits is such a fun thing to sit through. Every time I watch the film, I have to watch the credits roll all the way through just because I love the sound. And is that something that you just like have fun with and just jam out with as you're creating, or is it something that you kind of curate piecier?
I mean, kind of. It's something that you just jam out with, because I mean, it's the last bit. You know, really, very few people sit through the end credits, but people who do, they want to hear the best of the music, right? And so it's just like, okay, well, this is. I'm taking the music from the final scene and just completely merging it with the end credit. So you've got to start off dour, but then you've got to give the biggest performances of the theme.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's if you're invested in the score, those are the bits you want to hear. You want to hear the themes, and you want to hear them in either the most melodic and lyrical, you know, beautiful renditions of them, or the most kick-ass renditions of them.
Mm.
So it was my job for that. So really, that was just a jam, because
Mhm.
you've got Leo fighting the boss, which is unrestrained, just action and a heroic rendition of the theme. But before that, there's no really big statements of that theme. So it's my last hurrah for that theme. So I want to make it go out as big as possible. And like I said, I love all these big Hollywood and international film composers. So I just wanted to have a big ending.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a big, pompously epic, delusions of grandeur. I'm up there with the big boys composing. Have a big Hollywood sign off.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. That's something that I just love about the end credits, because the way you went about it, now knowing what you thought going into it, the end credits always feels like, for me, like I really am just sitting in a movie theater and the credits are just rolling, and just in the Dolby Atmos speakers they're just blasting. I can just picture it. So it's really cool.
It's my chance to show off. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yep. Very true. I guess I just have a couple more questions for you, and this one's just a little more lighthearted. But what are some of your favorite tracks in the score? Like your top three that you just really love?
Top three, Showdown.
Showdown. Yep, of course.
The main title, where you're first introduced to the theme,
Mhm.
and a little track that I did that was just a jam, so I could put trombone in there, of Jolene's Cool, that used to play over some radio at the beginning of the film.
Good morning, all you beautiful folks out in Indian country.
Remember, anywhere on this
I just love putting that together. And that's just a bit of fun, really.
Yeah. That's a track that you sent me, and I was like, David, there's no way we're gonna fit this in the film. There's no. I was like, there's no place for it, but I was able to find a place in that opening radio sequence. But yeah, that definitely was a track where I could just tell you were just so excited to make it, and I was like, we got to get it in there.
I mean, I knew it was a risk because I'd done the main theme, and you were like, "Oh, this is perfect." And then I kept banging on when we were chatting. Oh, I'm putting together, some demos for the Rest Stop Shooter and Screams in the Distance. And you were like, "Oh yeah, can't wait to hear them." And then I didn't send you those, and instead I sent this, which is completely different. It's something I hadn't talked about. And there's a trombone jazz solo in the middle of it. And I was like, sure, you were like, what the fuck is this? This can't go in the movie. It's like, well, just send it to the actress. I'm sure she'll like it. It's just a little groove that I put together that felt like this is her character, but before and after. But yeah, before the trauma, definitely.
On a Sunday afternoon, on Sunday evening.
Yeah, that's her sass personified.
Yeah, and that is something that I did send to the actress. I remember I sent it to her. I was like, "Hey, the composer made this track just for your character. I definitely want to send it to you," and sent it her way. But yeah, that's always a funny story about how you randomly sent me that track, and I was like, "There's no way." Okay. I think some of my favorite tracks. I really love the Visiting Detention, which is right before the Leo and Jolene conversation in the jail, when Jolene arrives at the detention center. I really just I love that track so much. The Showdown has to be in there. The Showdown is just so great. And then Screams in the Distance is just something that I just love. I just love it. Sometimes I'll just be driving in my car and I'll just play that song because I just want to feel it rumble. That's just a track that I really like. But the last question that I have for you, and something that I'm really curious about, is what is something, or just overall, what did you learn working on this film creating a score for a whole feature, what's some big things that you really took away for the next one?
I mean, for the next one, which I know it's going to be coming soon, I can't wait. But well, I mean, it's just great. I had done projects before this, but it's great to work with a director who's so tuned in to the music. You always had so much feedback for me, and your own ideas that really guided me. Because I've worked on other projects, and none of the experiences were bad. It's just most of the time, it was the feedback was, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
But can you do something different? That was the line. What does that even mean? Like, I'm thinking of changing the tone a bit. The tone of what? Like the music or the movie or both? Or in what way? So with you, it was always no. I've got these ideas, and you always gave me the couple of cues from The Last of Us, and you were saying, this is what I really want to have that kind of vibe in an action world.
Yeah.
Can you do something with that? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can take that and we'll run with that. And it was just, I mean, we talk about music all the time, whenever we're on a chat about movies, just in general. So it's great to have that understanding, because I know that our tastes kind of align, but also that you know the music and you appreciate the music. Phil.
Absolutely.
Rather than just being like, well, I never really thought about it, to be honest. But okay, great. Well, you need to think about it now.
Yep. That's something that I'm really glad you mentioned. I appreciate that, but it's just because, like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, my first film, just pulling royalty-free tracks. But the main reason that I got into film in the first place is because of the music. The music is just so iconic, and even, I don't know if it's for most filmmakers, but I know for me, my stories come out of music and come out of sound. I listen to film scores, and then I'm playing a video game and I hear music, and it just the story and the emotion just comes out of me, and just hearing how you describe how you create that music, which is something that for me, I just can't wrap my head around. Just how the music is created. It's just always such a cool concept to me, and I think that's what makes me so passionate about it. And now just having our collaboration, I'm just super excited to continue it. We've already been able to continue it a few different times with a short film here, or a theme for the next feature here. But I'm just so excited to get into that next project where we could just go all out and do this all again, because this is absolutely my favorite part.
It's going to be an absolute blast, and you hear that, folks? There's more to come. Lots more to come. Carla's got tons of ideas up his sleeve.
Absolutely. I'm just super excited to get back to it, and I think for anyone that is watching this, I think as long as I'm making films and I ever get the opportunity to have David on the score, trust and believe that David will be on the score. So we're just going to continue growing. Hopefully have a great relationship for a long time to come.
Yes, mate. I'll be riding your coattails all the
way. All right, but thank you for doing this conversation. I hope people who watch this just get a lot of insight from it, because I think the music definitely from Torn Apart needs a lot more shine, and just film score in general. I love seeing conversations between directors and composers just talking about that process, because I think it's the most interesting process in all of filmmaking. And just appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, you're more than welcome, mate.
That was David Willox, the Torn Apart composer, and it's Tokala Tatum, the director and creator of Torn Apart. I guess we'll see you in the future.